right, ladies and gentlemen, next we'll be hearing from futurist Dr. Barbara Romer, art curator and strategy consultant, on a case study that highlights urban planning and placemaking for the cultural and creative sector. Dr. Barbara?
Thank you for that kind introduction. Can you hear me? Wonderful. Hi. So my name is Barbara Romer. I run a small creative consultancy which specializes in creating global art strategies. And I was asked to talk about case studies about placemaking. And so I'm going to start walking you through 10 rules, too much coffee, for creative placemaking. So we work all over the world, and I'm going to pick a couple that actually show these rules. However, I wanted to start by saying that creative placemaking is unlike traditional arts and culture offering, right? I just want to go and be very clear about that from the beginning. So what do I mean? I mean, traditionally, we think about museums as a place where we don't touch, where we're kept apart. But here we're asking you to please touch. We're usually looking at art from a distance, where there's a barrier, but here we're actually invited inside of the painting. We're usually told to be quiet, but here we're actually encouraged to be loud. Theater and museums are within walls, but we're asking people to come outside, to have no walls, to be in the public realm. So asking you not just to be a spectator, but actually a participant, a creator yourself, to become part of this development. So really, as creative placemakers, we see everything as a blank canvas. And so the 10 rules I want to talk to you about today are going to be using case studies. And the very first thing I want to talk about is celebrating the local community as a subject. Right? Probably the most famous artist who does that, who gives a community a voice, is the French photographer and street artist J.R. here in New York, who actually photographs communities. And this was after the hurricane in New Orleans, right, making people laugh. He tells the story, we are Arabs, we're humans in Jordan, and gives that community a face. But that doesn't just have to be photographs. This is in Abu Dhabi, a 600-meter mural by Evoca One, Elio Mercado, where he tells about the history, the heritage, the basket weaving, and so also using murals and paintings to tell that story. And that is my team with Evoca, who's the second from the left there. And incredible artworks that really speak to the community. And while we're working on this, I was very aware of this campaign for the Year of Tolerance. Together we are Abu Dhabi, and I'm Abu Dhabi, and I was really intrigued by the faces. And as a curator, they immediately reminded me of Brazilian street artist Cobra's work, who uses murals, faces of cultural empathy to really build those bridges between communities. So I reached out to Cobra and invited him to come to Abu Dhabi to actually paint those faces, those very faces from the campaign on a huge canvas. So this is in the Albertine boat shed. It's 40 meters high, it's 150 meters wide. And I actually looked it up this morning. It was 2,047 spray can. So you know the scale of that now. And so he finished this just 2-3 months before COVID hit. And, but it doesn't always have to be on a massive scale, right? You can have case studies and artworks on a much, much more intimate scale that are also very powerful and impactful. Like here, Ernest Zakarevich, a Lithuanian artist who was working in Penang, Malaysia. And these are the children, right? And everybody, when you look at this, you just smile. And so it builds that bridge to the community. And so we invited Ernest to come to paint the children of Abu Dhabi. And the one thing I asked him, I said, can we please start with 2 girls, 2 Emirati girls, and you show their faces, and you paint these. And so I just want to tell you this little story. This is while he was painting, so it's not a finished painting, as you see. And the father came with these 2 girls, and they were a bit shy, so I asked them if they wanted to meet the artist, and they went by the barrier. And they were shy, and they talked, and then at the very end, after about 5 minutes, a little girl with her pink shirt came up to me and pulled on my sleeve and said, I want to be a painter. So it was that single day that changed that girl's life. And honestly, if that's the only thing that happened in my year of working as a curator in Abu Dhabi, that's worth it, right? So it's doing these public realm, creative placemaking interventions that are so powerful. So treat your public realm as a museum without walls. Think of all of the space as a gallery, as a museum. So this is Pigalle in Paris, where a sports court has just suddenly become this pop art attraction. Right, this was one of my projects in around the Dubai fountain. Those are musical seesaws. So again, interactive, participatory, and bringing the community in. And here actually, Yuri Suzuki's sonic installation, not inside of the museum, which is right behind it, but in front of it, and ask the kids to explore it and get to be excited about going inside. Mark Fornes, who does beautiful work, I think especially for the region, fractal shading is so important, right? So why can't we use art as shelter? Art to actually give you a way to spend more time during the daytime outside. And you know, it could look much more like a museum or gallery. Like Paris, you always have these kind of exhibitions. And here's wonderful photographer Reza from National Geographic, his portraits of humanity along the Seine. And he actually takes tours and tells you about these different faces he has photographed. And here it is also in Afghanistan, right? So be imaginative about your public realm, about the space you can be in. So curate for walkability. I think especially with the pandemic of obesity, think about walking. Let's get out of those cars and think about walking. And so this is my own backyard in New York, the High Line, right? A 2.33 green artery that flows through downtown Manhattan. And it is all about walking. And they had anticipated 400,000 people to come, but more than 7 million people go, and they just walk. But what do they do on the High Line? They put artworks, not just paintings, but also sculptures. And I think of it a bit like the breadcrumbs of Hansel and Gretel, right? Where you just walk and you just see another one, and then you keep walking until the next one. So when we were discussing Dubai, the big ring road, I was thinking about Emmanuel Moreau, a French artist who lives in Tokyo. And so we, with Chairman Imar, who's an incredible visionary, talked about how do we activate this 1 kilometer ring road to give it shading. And so we got Emmanuel to actually do an installation, 1 kilometer of 100 colors. And people started walking the entire ring road. And there was actually a game that started where people were trying to match the outfit color to the color that was above them on the boulevard. I had the great honor of working with Carlos Cruz Diaz just before he passed away in July 2019. And so what he does is he activates actually the ground below you, right? The art crossings, the zebra crossings, rethinking it, and then the new school like a Camille Walala. What I would say though is let us not forget that this needs to be local. I know there's so much talk about global cities today, but let's talk about local cities with global appeal. Let me repeat that, local cities with global appeal. I think we're losing the authenticity. When I don't know which city I am, we have a problem. So brilliant Adam Nathaniel Furman, who's a trained architect, when we talked to him about art crossings for Abu Dhabi, he actually looked at the architecture and he looked at the buildings, and that was the inspiration. So let's think about how does all this art really become an expression of the local character. Like Hibi Kozo in Sharjah, or El Cid, who's actually talking at 5 o'clock. I'm very excited he's in the house, so do please go and listen to him speak later. So the key is it's not just consumption, it's participation. How do we get people to come in and participate in the creative process, right? So it's your community as creator. Candy Chang does amazing work. She asked the community to express their voices. And so this is very simple, right? It's just a stencil and a blank wall. But the community is now saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to be in this community? And then involve them, involve your schools, involve your universities to be part of that process. Amazing group out of Spain, Boa Mistura, actually works with the community. And you might be worried looking at these little kids painting, it might be sloppy or it might not be attractive. Well, great design can help get around that, right? And so it is, again, controlled creativity, but everybody is a part of it and is a stakeholder. So here, when you think about Mexico, how different will you feel living in this home when you have painted it and it is your work that you're celebrating? Very, very, very important, amplify your local artists. And I know I'm showing a lot of international artists because I'm doing international case studies, but amplify your local artists. So always start by identifying and cataloging your local artists. And we've done that everywhere we start. When there isn't a vibrant community already there, work and identify them and bring them out, and then amplify the artists that are already there and who are revered. So Mohamed Ahmed Ibrahim, huge honor for me to meet him. very, very impressive artist with a very bold, strong, powerful vision. And I took him to this market. It's the Minad Zayed market, which is the produce market, very much at the heart of the Abu Dhabi community. And I walked around with him and I said, could you paint this? Could you make this your community's plaza to come to? And he became very quiet and he said, it's too big for me. I don't know how to do this at this scale. So I said, okay, we can work this out. So Gaia is a friend of mine from Philadelphia, is a muralist who works on huge scales. So Gaia came out and together with Mohammed, they started painting. And that's the two of them together in the basket. The crazy thing is I later found out that Mohammed was actually really scared of heights. And then when I saw him, that's Gaia with him, when I saw him this day, when I took this photo, he actually just ran up to me and said, I'm dancing on air. Right? And so it changed the way they're relating, how they think, and they're now planning future projects together. So how wonderful is that? And I love this image, right? And that is a true local voice in a true community center. So it's so important to do that. Very critical, timely payments. I could speak about that for about half an hour. If you do not pay the artists on time, they cannot afford to work for you. So I will say this, anyone, everywhere I speak, when I ask an artist to do a proposal, they will be paid because we cannot beautify our cities without putting the worth onto these incredible creators. Rule number 7, artify the school. Thank you, yes. Currently working 2 years afterwards to still get somebody paid. And if I spend more time doing accounting than creative things, I go insane, and that's what's happening, which you're witnessing. Rule number 7, artify your school environments, right? Because this is where you start. And when I first saw these schools, I walked around and I thought, wow, these look like prisons. I really thought they were like detention centers. And I thought, oh, we have to rethink this. Why don't we work with the students? So this is a Zimbabwe artist who's also a teacher who worked with the students to develop a vision of what the school environment could be like. And these are climbable sculptures that were there to engage. And so they're all approved by the teachers in the process. Here's another school. There were 3 schools, actually. And it was a 1 kilometer long perimeter that wove all around the schools. And so together with the students and teachers, they designed replicating and telling the story of these schools. And I think one was a girls' school, which also did aviation. And so these are all kind of expressed in the boundaries and asking them to be there. Celebrate diversity, very, very important. And I'm not going to say it's always easy. This is a photo I took just because it cracked me up and I have a weird sense of humor. But so I do find that that is important. And it's not going to be always easy to find equal representation, but bring them out, bring them forth, encourage, find new talent. Tarsila Schubert was painting first in Abu Dhabi. And then Mad C actually came. This is her, also scared of heights. I'm learning that a lot of muralists are absolutely terrified of heights, which is fascinating. But so Mad C, there she is, small woman, and that was a 54-meter high building. I went up there with her. I could only make it to like the 10th floor, and I was freaking out. But so beautiful, grand vision of her developing it there. And there's the team behind her, and I love that she's the only woman in that, right? But more power to her. But in the same way, also invited from Argentina to Alfala Street, wonderful Elian Chali, who's a little person. And he's fearless, and I adore him, and he's just joyful to work with. And he would just not be fazed by anything. But so what an incredible symbol to give to your community to work in the open with these talents. Finally, don't forget that you can use your artists as PR agents for sustainability, to communicate meaning. And I think that's really important. You might know famous examples, like Olafur Eliasson here in front of the Tate Modern with the ice melting, right? And he has a very loud voice, and it's an amazing way that he's using this to amplify the message. And it makes people talk about it. So think about the issue you want to communicate. Lorenzo Quinn, when he did the hands in Venice that symbolize the water and Venice, the city actually coming down in front of our eyes, this image traveled the world, right? And that is a man who's literally just created 2 hands. So appeal to your artists to have imagination. Dan Rosegarden is somebody who amazes me continually. So the previous one It's a bicycle path that is solar powered and is based on Van Gogh's painting, Starry Night. But what he did here is Wasserlicht, which was done here in Amsterdam, right? And what you're looking at is the poetry of water, but also the power of water. Because what he's saying is that if we don't do something, this is going to be the level of the water in front of the Rijksmuseum, which means we're all dead, right? But he's also saying this is the power that we could actually harness from water. So it's a very poetic but very powerful way to alert us and make us be aware. One of my favorite humans in the world is Wolfgang Buttress, who I just visited in Nottingham last week, who did the hive to alert us all about bees disappearing, right? And what he does so beautifully is marry technology, music, architecture, and meaning, and communicate that. This artwork, I don't know if you know, is directly linked to a beehive. So 24/7, it is taking the sound of the bees and turning them into musical instruments. So being in this sphere is like entering into an alchemy of magic, and you leave transformed. Or Ai Weiwei's obsession with bicycles, right? What a wonderful way to bring that to Abu Dhabi and have people running around on bicycles and just really elevating a lot of these issues. And this is my own idea, which I had, which was, couldn't the 4 seasons exist at the same time? It's zero carbon, that you could walk from spring to summer to fall to winter. And so I asked Kalarati from MIT to think about this, and what we figured out ultimately is that in order to cool for winter, your byproduct is heat, so we pump that into summer, right? And so at zero carbon, we actually had all 4 seasons coexisting. And so kind of using creative thinking to poke and really push people in their thinking. And rule number 10, not to be underestimated, engage women in city planning. So this is a picture that looks very much like most of my meetings. The record I think I counted was I was the only woman in a room of 250 men. Granted, I was a key speaker, but it was still 250 men and 1 woman. And I find myself constantly in planning meetings, city planning meetings, where it is not sufficiently represented by females. And I love the diversity on these stages here, and I'm so grateful, and it was one of the reasons I came. But I think what we need to think about is that when we're planning playgrounds, and we're planning that with only men, the amount of discussions I've had about soccer and cricket and football, etc., that's all lovely, but I don't do any of that. And so when I think of me as a little girl, this is how I see myself, right? And it's obviously milking on your sentiments, but it is questioning, what are we designing for the future, and what is the urban planning we're looking into? Research in Sweden actually showed from the University of Stockholm that 80% of public spaces are geared towards boys. 80%. So that's Sweden. So I assume the US, it must be like 95%, and the rest of the world like 100. So really, really important for us to remember to plan with everybody in the room, to welcome everybody in the room. So the research showed that what girls are looking for from a playground, sheltered spaces, places where they're held, that they feel safe, and they don't feel like the boys can see them, and that they prefer to be in spaces where they can look at each other and they can talk and then socialize. So very different ways. So where are these spaces? I don't see them yet. So I'm doing this call for action really to this room, to even if they're young, even if they're not knowledgeable, bring the women, or at least do focus groups, but bring the women into the rooms where decisions are being made. Because this is the future I would like to see, and I'd be thrilled to be in any of those meetings. And I thank you for your attention, and that was my 10 roles. Thank you.